In one old photo taken in Moscow, there's a face that cost the United States millions. They feared him, but could never stop him. He didn't just expose a network of foreign agents. He made them play by his rules. The Americans were sure they were one step ahead until they realized they had been misled the entire time. They mistook fake signals for real intelligence, followed paths set by others, and lost control without even noticing. The reputation of the most important American intelligence hub in Eastern Europe was at stake, along with the safety of dozens of people. Meanwhile, in Lubyanka, they already knew who was behind the game. The most shocking part is how it all began and how it ended. In this video, you'll discover who infiltrated the American system, why a fake agent was created, and how it turned into the greatest failure in their entire Soviet-era operation. But most importantly, what the CIA never realized until it was far too late. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe. You are not here by accident. 1979. The American embassy in Moscow transforms into something unprecedented, the most sophisticated intelligence gathering center in Eastern Europe. Behind diplomatic facades, the finest minds from Langley assemble their arsenal. Advanced surveillance equipment flows through diplomatic pouches. The stage is set for what historians would later call the most intensive intelligence battle of the Cold War. But the Soviets are watching. Every wire, every frequency, every face that enters those hallowed halls. On the 7th floor, tucked away in a specially constructed chamber, sits a room that officially doesn't exist. Its walls contain materials designed to block electromagnetic waves. The Americans know their conversations are being intercepted. Inside this sterile sanctuary, the new CIA station chief begins each briefing the same way, pointing to a single photograph. "This is the man hunting you," he tells his operatives. The face belongs to Rem Krasilnikov, head of the American department within Soviet counterintelligence, a man who has made it his life's work to neutralize every American asset on Soviet soil. What neither Krasilnikov nor his American counterparts realize is that their greatest challenge isn't coming from across the Iron Curtain, it's already inside their own walls. 1985. An emergency meeting convenes in the bowels of Lubyanka. The impossible has happened. Someone within the KGB's central apparatus is feeding information to the Americans. A mole, one of their own. The intelligence comes from an unlikely source, Aldrich Ames, a CIA operative who has chosen to switch sides. But Ames only knows fragments. A code name, Cowell. A first name, Alex. Two identifying characteristics that feel impossibly broad in an organization of thousands. The traitor is someone with access to central counterintelligence files, someone who traveled to Ireland, someone connected to a highly classified chemical compound used for covert surveillance operations. Finding this person becomes Krasilnikov's obsession. But how do you hunt a ghost when every lead dissolves under scrutiny? Chapter 3. The Engineer's Secret. While Krasilnikov searches for his mole, American operations continue with devastating effectiveness. Their prize asset, Adolf Tolkachev, a senior engineer at the secret Phasotron Research Institute. Tolkachev isn't just any informant. He has access to the Soviet Union's most advanced fighter aircraft systems, friend or foe identification technology, onboard computing systems that allow jets to evade enemy radar. Most critically, he knows details about revolutionary systems designed to detect low-flying targets and cruise missiles. Over several years, 54 classified military projects find their way into American hands through Tolkachev's betrayal. But even the most careful operations leave traces. And Soviet counterintelligence is patient, methodical, relentless. The breakthrough comes from an unexpected direction. Another American defector, Edward Howard, dismissed from the CIA after failing polygraph tests and struggling with alcohol dependency, provides the missing piece. Howard knows about Tolkachev because he was being prepared for Moscow operations, specifically to handle this most valuable asset. The irony is palpable. The CIA's most productive Soviet source will be exposed by their own discarded operative. Soviet operatives orchestrate Tolkachev's capture with surgical precision. But according to counterintelligence doctrine, catching the agent isn't enough. You must also capture the handler. Prove the connection. Complete the circle. Every detail matters in this chess game. Tolkachev lives in a high-rise apartment on Uprising Square, deliberately chosen for its proximity to the American embassy. His communication method is elegantly simple: an open window visible to CIA watchers conducting surveillance from the embassy grounds. The psychological pressure on Tolkachev during his final months must have been enormous. Each day wondering if today would be his last. Each signal wondering if he's walking into a trap, but the money keeps flowing, tens of thousands of rubles for each delivery. The addiction to betrayal proves stronger than fear. The trap is set using Tolkachev's own communication methods. The window opens, the signal is given. Somewhere in the embassy, watchers confirm their asset is ready for contact. The American handler arrives, disguised but confident. Paul Stombaugh, operating under diplomatic cover as second secretary of the political section. He carries the standard spy toolkit: miniature cameras, coded instructions, and cash payments. He never suspects that every step has been choreographed by his opponents. What Stombaugh doesn't know is that Krasilnikov himself is overseeing the operation from a command post nearby. The man who studied American intelligence methods for decades is finally watching his theoretical knowledge play out in real time. The arrest is swift and professional. Tolkachev faces the ultimate punishment, charged with treason in the form of espionage under Article 64 of the Criminal Code. The sentence is carried out with the same efficiency that characterized his betrayal. Stombaugh is expelled, but his diplomatic status protects him from harsher consequences. Still, the psychological impact of complete operational failure will haunt American intelligence planning for years. But the mole hunt continues, because Krasilnikov knows that individual victories mean nothing if the systemic problem remains unsolved. Months pass. The search for Cowell becomes increasingly desperate. Hundreds of personnel files are reviewed. Travel records spanning years are cross-referenced. Every possible connection to Ireland is investigated, no matter how tenuous. The investigators face a maddening puzzle. How do you find someone when you only know they traveled to Ireland as part of a Soviet delegation, using a false identity, and had access to classified surveillance compounds? The haystack contains thousands of possibilities, and the needle could be anyone. Krasilnikov's team develops a systematic approach. First, identify every KGB officer who traveled to Ireland in the past 5 years. Second, determine which of those had access to the special chemical markers used for tracking American diplomats. Third, cross-reference with personality profiles that might indicate susceptibility to recruitment. The work is mind-numbing. Thick ledgers filled with code names and operational aliases. Ivanov, II, could be anyone. Each entry requires separate investigation to determine the real identity, then additional research to confirm travel dates and security clearances. Senior investigator Sergei Terekhov spends months in archives, following paper trails that often lead nowhere. The complexity is staggering. Some officers traveled under multiple false identities, making verification nearly impossible. Then Ames provides another crucial detail. The traitor has betrayed one of the KGB's own informants to prove his value to American handlers. This single piece of intelligence changes everything. Soviet record-keeping is meticulous, especially regarding informant networks. Cross-referencing the compromised informant with personnel files reveals the answer that has eluded investigators for months. Sergei Vorontsov. Not a senior counterintelligence officer as he claimed to the Americans, but a mid-level operative in the Moscow regional KGB office. Someone who had been demoted from department head to senior investigator, a professional humiliation that festered into resentment. The psychological profile fits perfectly. Vorontsov had been passed over for promotion, reduced in rank, assigned to mundane cases while watching younger officers advance. American recruiters specifically target individuals with grievances against their own organizations. But Vorontsov understood that a regional KGB officer held little interest for CIA handlers. So he crafted an elaborate lie, claiming to work in the prestigious American Department of Central Counterintelligence. The deception elevated his perceived value and opened doors that would otherwise remain closed. The Americans, desperate for any penetration of Soviet intelligence structures, chose to believe what they wanted to hear rather than what they could verify. While hunting human assets, both sides engage in an escalating technology battle that reveals the true scope of Cold War innovation. The 1980s represent a pivotal moment when traditional espionage methods collide with cutting-edge electronics. Soviet radio counterintelligence operators, working from monitoring stations across Moscow, begin detecting something unusual in late 1982. Brief, encrypted transmissions lasting barely 10 seconds, always from different locations, always followed by complete radio silence. The signals appear random at first, but patterns emerge for those patient enough to map them. Someone is testing a new communication system, methodically working through Moscow's geography. The precision suggests military-grade planning. The connection becomes clear when surveillance teams notice American diplomats carrying unusually large shopping bags during their movements around the city. These aren't casual shopping trips. The bags are too structured, too carefully guarded, too consistent across different operatives. Krasilnikov's analysts piece together the implications. The Americans are field testing satellite communication equipment that could revolutionize espionage operations. No more dangerous face-to-face meetings. No more risky dead drops. Just brief bursts of encrypted data beamed directly to orbiting receivers. If successful, this technology would render traditional counterintelligence methods obsolete. How do you track someone who never meets their handlers? How do you intercept communications that last only seconds and use constantly changing frequencies? The Soviet response demonstrates the methodical patience that characterizes Krasilnikov's approach. Rather than rushing to jam the signals or confront the Americans immediately, his team studies the testing pattern. The transmissions follow a clockwise progression around Moscow, north to east to south. Elementary logic suggests the next tests will occur in western districts. March 7, 1983. Filyovsky Park on Moscow's western edge. Mobile teams of radio specialists and surveillance operatives position themselves throughout the area. The trap is set with the same precision the Americans use for their technology tests. Richard Osborne, first secretary of the economic section, walks through the park with his wife on what appears to be a casual afternoon stroll. But every movement is monitored, every gesture analyzed. The arrest happens in moments. Osborne's wife carries the precious equipment, 2 kilograms of miniaturized satellite communication technology that represents years of American research and development. The device is small enough to fit in a shopping bag, but sophisticated enough to communicate with orbiting satellites. During the confrontation, the woman fights desperately to protect the bag, understanding its strategic importance. The handle tears off during the struggle, but Soviet operatives recover the complete system intact. The implications ripple through both intelligence communities. For the Americans, years of development and testing have been wasted. For the Soviets, a potential technological catastrophe has been averted before it could mature into operational reality. Krasilnikov understands the broader significance. In a city of several million people spread across 900 square kilometers, finding agents using conventional methods remains feasible. But if American technology had reached operational status, detection would become nearly impossible. The brief transmission time and vast coverage area would create perfect conditions for undetectable espionage. But Krasilnikov understands that capturing operatives and seizing technology represents only the defensive dimension of counterintelligence work. True mastery requires offensive operations, turning the enemy's strengths against them, feeding their hunger for intelligence with carefully crafted deceptions. The concept of operational games has existed in Soviet intelligence doctrine for decades, but never before has anyone proposed using an active KGB officer as bait. The risks are enormous. If the deception fails, not only would valuable operational methods be exposed, but a trained intelligence officer could be compromised or lost entirely. 1988. Operation Phantom begins with meticulous planning sessions in Krasilnikov's office. Every detail must be perfect, because there will be no second chances. American intelligence officers are trained to detect deception, to question motives, to verify claims through multiple sources. Alexander Zhomov, the chosen operative, must become someone else entirely. His background, motivations, access levels, and personality traits are carefully constructed to appeal to CIA recruitment preferences. The Americans favor volunteers who approach them rather than targets they must develop over time. They want someone with obvious grievances against the Soviet system and clear access to valuable intelligence. The approach method receives particular attention. First contact must appear spontaneous, yet allow for secure communication. After extensive analysis of American travel patterns, the team identifies the perfect opportunity: CIA Station Chief Jack Downing's regular trips to Leningrad aboard the Red Arrow Express train. Train compartments offer unique advantages for clandestine meetings. The enclosed environment provides privacy, while the constant motion makes electronic surveillance difficult. The predetermined schedule allows both parties to plan their presence without appearing to coordinate. The psychological elements receive equal attention. Zhomov must project confidence without arrogance, desperation without weakness, knowledge without revealing operational methods. His cover story must explain why a KGB officer would risk everything to betray his country, while simultaneously demonstrating the value he could provide. The bait requires unprecedented authenticity. Instead of fabricated documents, Jomov carries genuine surveillance photographs of Downing and his wife, taken by actual KGB surveillance teams. This proof of operational capability simultaneously demonstrates access and creates psychological pressure on the American intelligence officer. Early morning on the Red Arrow. Downing steps into the smoking compartment between cars, following his usual routine. Jomov approaches with calculated timing, not too eager, not too hesitant. The cigarette pack exchange happens in seconds, but its contents will reshape American intelligence priorities for months. Inside the pack, along with the photographs, lies a carefully crafted message. The English is perfect, but not too perfect, retaining subtle indicators of native Russian thinking patterns. The content reveals just enough to prove authenticity while withholding everything that could expose ongoing Soviet operations. The Americans respond exactly as predicted. Downing's immediate reaction shows intense interest tempered by professional caution. The photographs prove that Soviet surveillance capabilities exceed American assumptions, while the written proposal suggests access to information that could transform their understanding of KGB operations. But verification becomes the Americans' obsession. They cannot simply accept such a valuable approach without extensive testing. A specially trained interrogator arrives from Langley headquarters with sophisticated recording equipment and psychological evaluation protocols. The verification session takes place in a parked car near Sportivnaya metro station, chosen for its combination of accessibility and security. For nearly 2 hours, the American specialist probes Jomov's story, searching for inconsistencies that might indicate deception. Every answer has been rehearsed, but not to the point of sounding scripted. Jomov's responses demonstrate the kind of detailed knowledge that only comes from genuine access to counterintelligence operations. He discusses specific surveillance techniques, mentions operational code names that American intelligence has encountered, and provides insights into KGB organizational structure that align with their existing knowledge. The psychological evaluation proves even more crucial than factual verification. CIA analysts have developed profiles of successful Soviet defectors, identifying personality traits and motivational patterns that indicate genuine conversion rather than orchestrated deception. Jomov's performance must align with these expectations while avoiding obvious manipulation. The recorded session undergoes analysis by multiple teams of specialists in Langley. Linguists examine speech patterns for signs of rehearsal. Psychologists evaluate emotional responses and stress indicators. Intelligence analysts cross-reference factual claims with known information about Soviet operations. Their conclusion: the approach appears genuine. The combination of valuable intelligence, obvious access, and psychologically consistent motivation convinces American leadership to proceed with full recruitment efforts. But Jomov never boards the ship in Helsinki. The promised intelligence never materializes. Instead, the KGB has identified and compromised the CIA's most sensitive extraction routes. The American commitment to their new asset exceeds even Krasilnikov's optimistic projections. Within weeks of the verification session, CIA operations in Moscow undergo complete reorganization. Resources previously dedicated to multiple intelligence targets concentrate on a single priority: protecting and eventually extracting their most valuable Soviet source. This strategic shift represents exactly what Krasilnikov hoped to achieve. American intelligence capabilities in the Soviet Union become focused on one individual rather than distributed across numerous operational targets. Other potential recruits receive less attention. Existing assets lose priority status. The entire apparatus reorients around managing their supposed breakthrough. But Jomov's demands create operational challenges that further strain American resources. His insistence on extraction to United States territory before providing the most sensitive intelligence forces, CIA planners, to activate their most carefully guarded asset evacuation procedures. These escape routes represent years of development and enormous investment. Creating reliable methods for moving high-value assets out of the Soviet Union requires extensive planning, multiple backup systems, and absolute secrecy. Compromising these channels would devastate American intelligence capabilities for years. The irony becomes apparent only in retrospect. By demanding extraction, Jomov forces the Americans to reveal their most precious operational secrets, not through interrogation or coercion, but through their own eagerness to exploit what they believe is an unprecedented opportunity. Helsinki Harbor. The designated meeting point where CIA officers expect to receive their prize and begin the most significant intelligence coup of the Cold War. The waiting begins at dawn and continues through the day. Ships arrive and depart. Passengers embark and disembark, but Alexander Jomov never appears. The psychological impact on American intelligence officers cannot be overstated. Months of planning, resource allocation, and anticipation culminate in complete failure. But the damage extends far beyond wounded pride or wasted effort. The extraction routes that took years to develop have been exposed and must be abandoned. Future asset evacuations will require entirely new methods, assuming American intelligence can develop alternatives that Soviet counterintelligence hasn't already identified and compromised. Meanwhile, genuine American assets operating in the Soviet Union benefit from an unexpected reprieve. With CIA attention focused on the Phantom operation, surveillance resources that might have detected real intelligence networks are diverted elsewhere. Some agents continue operating successfully for additional months, precisely because their opponents are chasing shadows. The numbers tell the story of Krasilnikov's decade with devastating clarity. More than 20 CIA agents among Soviet citizens exposed and arrested through methodical investigation. 5 CIA officers caught in active espionage operations and expelled from the country. An entire intelligence network systematically dismantled through patient, professional counterintelligence work. Beyond individual cases, the strategic impact proves even more significant. American intelligence operations in the Soviet Union shift from aggressive expansion to defensive damage control. The initiative has been lost, and with it, years of carefully cultivated assets and operational infrastructure. The human cost extends to both sides. Soviet citizens who chose betrayal face the ultimate consequences of their decisions. American intelligence officers who believed they were advancing their country's interests instead find their careers destroyed and their operations exposed. But perhaps most importantly, the psychological balance of power shifts decisively. American intelligence planners can no longer assume that Soviet counterintelligence operates reactively or defensively. The successful operational games demonstrate sophisticated offensive capabilities that force complete reassessment of assumptions about relative professional competence. When Krasilnikov passes away years later, his professional legacy generates recognition from unexpected sources. A telegram arrives from Hollywood, where a famous American actor had planned to portray him in a film about Cold War espionage. Even former adversaries acknowledge his professional excellence and strategic vision. The tribute reflects a broader truth about intelligence professionals, that competence and dedication earn respect even from opponents. In a world where national interests create unavoidable conflicts, individual excellence transcends political boundaries. The man in the photograph on that Moscow desk had succeeded beyond his wildest expectations, not through brutality or intimidation, but through patience, intelligence, and an understanding that in the world of espionage, the most dangerous enemy is often the one closest to home. His methods, meticulous investigation, psychological insight, strategic deception, became the foundation for counterintelligence operations that continue today. In a world where secrets determine the balance of power, Rem Krasilnikov proved that the most sophisticated technology means nothing without the human element. And sometimes, the greatest victories come not from what you capture, but from what you convince your enemy to reveal about themselves.